John Constantine Unitas, known as Johnny Unitas or Johnny U, and nicknamed the Golden Arm, was an American professional American football player in the 1950s through the 1970s. He spent the majority of his career playing for the Baltimore Colts. He was a record-setting quarterback, and the National Football League's most valuable player in 1959, 1964 and 1967. For 52 years he held the record for most consecutive games with a touchdown pass, until New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees broke his long-standing record on October 7, 2012. Unitas was the prototype of the modern-era marquee quarterback with a strong passing game, media fanfare, and widespread popularity. He has been consistently listed as one of the greatest NFL players of all time. Early life: John Constantine Unitas was born to Francis J. Unitas and Lithuanian immigrant Helen Suprafiski in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in 1933, and grew up in the Mount Washington neighborhood. His father died when Johnny was 4 years old of cardiovascular renal disease complicated by pneumonia, and he was raised by his mother, who worked 2 jobs to support the family. His unusual surname was a result of a phonetic transliteration of a common Lithuanian last name Joːnaɪtɨs. Attending St. Justin's High School in Pittsburgh, Unitas played halfback and quarterback. After high school, Unitas looked for an opportunity to play college football. The University of Louisville came through and Unitas left home for Kentucky. College career: in his younger years Johnny always dreamt about being part of the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. But, when he tried out for them the coach just simply said that he was just too skinny and he'd get murdered if he was put on the field. In his 4-year career as a Louisville Cardinal, Unitas completed 245 passes for 3,139 yards and 27 touchdowns. Reportedly, the 6'1" Johnny Unitas weighed 145 pounds on his first day of practice at Louisville. Unitas' first start was in the 5th game of the 1951 season against St. Bonaventure. That game, the freshman threw 11 consecutive passes and 3 touchdowns to give the Cardinals a 21-19 lead. Though Louisville lost the game 22-21 on a disputed field goal, it had found a talented quarterback. Unitas completed 12 of 19 passes for 240 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 35-28 victory over Houston. The team finished the season 5-5 overall and 4-1 with Unitas as the starting quarterback. As a freshman, Unitas completed 46 of 99 passes for 602 yards and 9 touchdowns. By the 1952 season, the university decided to de-emphasize sports. The new president at Louisville, Dr. Philip Grant Davidson, reduced the amount of athletic aid, and tightened academic standards for athletes. As a result, 15 returning players could not meet the new standards and lost their scholarships. But Unitas maintained his scholarship by taking on a new elective, square dancing. In 1952 Coach Camp switched the team to two-way football. Unitas not only played safety or linebacker on defense and quarterback on offense but returned kicks and punts on special teams. The Cards won their first game against Wayne State, and then Florida State in the second game. Unitas completed 16 of 21 passes for 198 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was said that Unitas put on such a show at the Florida State game that he threw a pass under his legs for 15 yards. The rest of the season was a struggle for the Cards, who finished 3-5. Unitas completed 106 of 198 passes for 1,540 yards and 12 touchdowns in his sophomore year. The team won their first game in 1953, against Murray State, and lost the rest for a record of 1-7. One of the most memorable games of the season came in a 59-6 loss against Tennessee. Unitas completed 9 of 19 passes for 73 yards, rushed 9 times for 52 yards, returned 6 kickoffs for 85 yards, 1 punt for 3 yards, and had 86% of the team's tackles. The only touchdown the team scored was in the fourth quarter when Unitas made a fake pitch to the running back and ran the ball 23 yards for a touchdown. Unitas was hurt later in the fourth quarter while trying to run the ball. on his way off the field received a standing ovation. When he got to the locker room he was so worn that his jersey and shoulder pads had to be cut off because he could not lift his arms. Louisville ended the season with 20-13 loss to Eastern Kentucky. In his junior year, Unitas completed 49 of 95 passes for 470 yards and 3 touchdowns. Unitas was elected captain for the 1954 season, but due to an early injury did not see much playing time. His first start was the third game of the season, against Florida State. Of the 34-man team, 21 were freshmen. The 1954 Louisville Cardinals went 3-6, with the last win at home against Morehead State. Unitas was slowed by so many injuries his senior year. His 527 passing yards ended second to Jim Houser's 560. Professional career, Pittsburgh Steelers. After college, the Pittsburgh Steelers of the NFL drafted Unitas in the 9th round. However, Unitas was released before the season began as the odd man out among 4 quarterbacks trying to fill 3 spots. Steelers head coach Walt Kisling had made up his mind about Unitas. He thought he was not smart enough to quarterback an NFL team, and Unitas was not given any snaps in practice with the Steelers. Among those edging out Unitas was Ted Marchibroda, future NFL quarterback and longtime NFL head coach. Out of pro football, Unitas by this time married worked in construction in Pittsburgh to support his family. On the weekends, he played quarterback, safety and punter on a local semi-pro team called the Bloomfield Rams for $6 a game. Baltimore Colts. In 1956, Unitas joined the Baltimore Colts of the NFL under legendary coach Weeby Bank, after being asked at the last minute to join Bloomfield Rams lineman Jim DeGlow, a Croatian steel worker with a life much like Unitas, at the latter's scheduled Colts tryout. The pair borrowed money from friends to pay for the gas to make the trip. DeGlow later told a reporter after Unitas' death, his uncle told him not to come. He was worried that if he came down and the Colts passed on him, it would look bad. The Colts signed Unitas, much to the chagrin of the Cleveland Browns, who had hoped to claim the rejected Steeler quarterback. Unitas made his NFL debut with an inauspicious mop-up appearance against Detroit, going 0-2 with 1 interception. 2 weeks later starting quarterback George Shaw suffered a broken leg against the Chicago Bears. In his first serious action, Unitas' initial pass was intercepted and returned for a touchdown. Then he botched a handoff on his next play, a fumble recovered by the Bears. Unitas rebounded quickly from that 58-27 loss, leading the Colts to an upset of Green Bay and their first win over Cleveland. He threw 9 touchdown passes that year, including one in the season finale that started his record 47-game streak. His 55.6% completion mark was a rookie record. In 1957, his first season as the Colts' full-time starter at quarterback, Unitas finished first in the NFL in passing yards and touchdown passes as he helped lead the Colts to a 7-5 record, the first winning record in franchise history. At season's end, Unitas was named the NFL's most valuable player by the Newspaper Enterprise Association. 1958, the greatest game ever played. Unitas continued his prowess in 1958 passing for 2,007 yards and 19 touchdowns as the Colts won the Western Conference title. The Colts won the NFL championship under Unitas' leadership on December 28, 1958, by defeating the New York Giants 23-17 in sudden death overtime. It was the first overtime game in NFL history, and is often referred to as the greatest game ever played. The game, nationally televised by NBC, has been credited for sparking the rise in popularity of professional football during the 1960s. First MVP in 1959. In 1959, Unitas was named the NFL's MVP by the Associated Press and UPI for the first time, leading the NFL in passing yards, touchdown passes and completions. Unitas then led the Colts to a repeat championship, beating the Giants again 31-16 in the title game. The AP award was considered the MVP award, adopting that verbiage in 1961. the Associated Press had always called the pre-1961 Players of the Year their MVP until 2008, when it was revealed to them that they had made certain errors in their listings, namely that Jim Brown was the 1958 MVP Player of the Year rather than Gino Marchetti, and that Unitas was the true winner in 1959, not juːɪtɨs. Rather than correct the winners, the AP disavowed that the pre-1961 winners were indeed MVPs, claiming that it was a different award. Nonetheless, UPI also voted Unitas the top player award, and there is little doubt that through sports history MVP and Player of the Year are terms that are interchangeable. Beginning of the 1960s, as the 1960s began, the Colts' fortunes declined. Injuries to key players such as Alan Amick, Raymond Berry and Lenny Moore were a contributing factor. Unitas' streak of 47 straight games with at least one touchdown pass ended against the Los Angeles Rams in Week 11 of the 1960 season. In spite of this, Unitas topped the 3,000-yard passing mark for the first time and lead the league in touchdown passes for the fourth consecutive season. After 3 middle-of-the-pack seasons, Colts owner Carroll Rosenblum fired Weeby Bank and replaced him with Don Shula, who at the time was the youngest head coach in NFL history. The Colts finished 8-6 in Shula's first season at the helm, good enough for only third place in the NFL's Western Conference, but they did end the season on a strong note by winning their final 3 games. The season was very successful for Unitas personally, as he led the NFL in passing yards with a career-best total of 3,481 and also led in completions with 237. Second MVP in 1964, the 1964 season would see the Colts return to the top of the Western Conference. After dropping their season opener to the Vikings, the Colts ran off 10 straight victories to finish with a 12-2 record. The season was one of Unitas' best, as he finished with 2,824 yards passing, a league-best 9.26 yards per pass attempt, 19 touchdown passes and only 6 interceptions. He was named the NFL's most valuable player by the AP and UPI for a second time. However, the season would end on a disappointing note for the Colts, as they were upset by the Cleveland Browns in the 1964 NFL Championship game, losing 27-0. Unitas resumed his torrid passing in 1965, as he threw for 2,530 yards, 23 touchdowns and finished with a league-high and career-best 97.1 passer rating. But he was lost for the balance of the season due to a knee injury in a Week 12 loss to the Bears. More post-season heartbreak would follow in 1965. The Colts and Packers finished in a tie for first place in the Western Conference, and a one-game playoff was played in Green Bay to decide who would be the conference representative in the 1965 NFL Championship game. The Colts lost in overtime 13-10 due in large part to a game-tying field goal by Don Chandler that many say was incorrectly ruled good. Backup quarterback Gary Quodso also suffered a season-ending injury the following week, and it would be running back Tom Matt who filled in as the emergency QB for the regular season finale and the playoff loss to the Packers. Unitas, healthy once more, threw for 2,748 yards and 22 touchdowns in 1966 in a return to Pro Bowl form. However, he posted a league-high 24 interceptions. Third MVP in 1967, after once again finishing second in the Western Conference in 1966, the Colts rebounded to finish 11-1-2 in 1967, tying the Los Angeles Rams for the NFL's best record. In winning his third MVP awards from the AP and UPI in 1967, Unitas had a league-high 58.5 completion percentage and passed for 3,428 yards and 20 touchdowns. He openly complained about having tennis elbow, and he threw 8 interceptions and only 3 touchdown passes in the final 5 games. Once again the season ended in heartbreak for the Colts, as they were shut out of the newly instituted 4-team NFL playoff after losing the divisional tiebreaker to the Rams, a 34-10 rout in the regular season finale. Super Bowls and final cold years. In the final game of the 1968 preseason, the muscles in Unitas' arm were torn when he was hit by a member of the Dallas Cowboys defense. Unitas wrote in his autobiography that he felt his arm was initially injured by the use of the night ball, that the NFL was testing for better TV visibility during night games. In a post-game interview the previous year, he noted having constant pain in his elbow for several years prior. He would spend most of the season sitting on the bench. But the Colts still marched to a league-best 13-1 record behind backup quarterback and ultimate 1968 NFL MVP Earl Morrall. Although he was injured through most of the season, Unitas came off the bench to play in Super Bowl III, the famous game where Joe Namath guaranteed a New York Jets win despite conventional wisdom. Unitas' insertion was a desperation move in an attempt to retrieve dominance of the NFL over the upstart AFL. Although the Colts finally won an NFL championship in 1968, they lost the Super Bowl to the AFL champion, New York Jets. Unitas helped put together the Colts' only score, a touchdown late in the game. Despite not playing until late in the third quarter, Unitas still finished with more passing yards than the team's starter, Morrall. After an off-season of rehabilitation on his elbow, Unitas rebounded in 1969, passing for 42 yards and 12 touchdowns with 20 interceptions. But the Colts were a disappointing 8-5-1 and missed the playoffs. In 1970, the NFL and AFL had merged into one league and the Colts moved to the new American Football Conference along with the Cleveland Browns and Pittsburgh Steelers. Unitas threw for 13 yards and 14 touchdowns while leading the Colts to an February 1, 11 season. In their first rematch with the Jets, Unitas and Namath threw a combined 9 interceptions in a 29-22 Colt win. Namath threw 62 passes and broke his hand on the final play, ending his season. Unitas played well in the AFC playoffs, throwing for 390 yards, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in victories over Cincinnati and Oakland. In Super Bowl V against the Dallas Cowboys he was knocked out of the game with a rib injury in the second quarter, after throwing a 75-yard touchdown pass. However, he had also tossed 2 interceptions. Earl Morrall came in to lead the team to a last-second 16-13 victory. Final years, in 1971 Unitas split playing time with Morrall, throwing only 3 touchdown passes. He started both playoff games, a win over Cleveland that sent the Colts to the AFC Championship game against the Miami Dolphins which they lost 21-0. Unitas threw 3 interceptions, 1 being returned for a touchdown. 1972 saw the Colts declining into mediocrity. After losing the season opener, Unitas was involved in the second and final regular season head-to-head meeting with Broadway Joe Namath. The first was in 1970. The last meeting was a memorable one. On September 24, 1972, at Memorial Stadium, Unitas threw for 376 yards and 3 touchdowns, but Namath upstaged him again, bombing the Colts for 496 yards and 6 touchdowns in a 44-34 Jets victory, their first over Baltimore since the 1970 merger. After losing 4 of their first 5 games, the Colts fired head coach Don McAfee and benched Unitas. One of the more memorable moments in football history came on Unitas' last game in a Colt uniform at Memorial Stadium in a game against Buffalo. Unitas was not the starter for this game, but the Colts were blowing the Bills out 28-0. Unitas came on due to the fans chanting "We want Unitas," and a plan devised by the head coach to convince Unitas that the starting quarterback was injured. Unitas came onto the field and proceeded to throw his last pass at home as a Colt, which was a short pass that the receiver was able to turn into a long touchdown as Baltimore won 35-7. San Diego, retirement and records. Unitas was traded to the San Diego Chargers in 1973 after posting a 5-9 record in 1972 with Baltimore, but he was far past his prime. He replaced former Chargers quarterback John Hadl. He was replaced in Baltimore by Marty Doms, acquired from the San Diego Chargers in August, 1972. Doms was ultimately replaced by LSU's Burt Jones, drafted with the number 2 pick. Unitas started the season with a 38-0 loss to the Washington Redskins. He threw for just 55 yards and 3 interceptions and was sacked 8 times. His final victory as a starter was against the Buffalo Bills in Week 2. Unitas was 10-18 for 175 yards, 2 touchdown passes and no interceptions in a 34-7 rout. After the victory against Buffalo, it looked like Unitas still had a chance to win for San Diego. Unitas was clearly not the same player he was years ago, and many were questioning his role as a starter after a loss to Cincinnati in Week 3. 2 weeks later he threw 2 first-half interceptions, threw for 19 yards and went 2 for 9 against the Pittsburgh Steelers and was replaced by rookie quarterback, future Hall of Famer Dan Fouts. After posting a 1-3 record as a starter, Unitas retired in the preseason of 1974. Unitas finished his 18 NFL seasons with 2,830 completions in 5,186 attempts for 40,239 yards and 290 touchdowns, with 253 interceptions. He also rushed for 1,777 yards and 13 touchdowns. Plagued by arm trouble in his later seasons, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns in 1968 to 1973. After averaging 215.8 yards per game in his first 12 seasons, his production fell to 124.4 in his final 6. His passer rating plummeted from 82.9 to 60.4 for the same periods. Even so, Unitas set many passing records during his career. He was the first quarterback to throw for more than 40,000 yards, despite playing during an era when NFL teams played shorter seasons of 12 or 14 games and prior to modern passing-friendly rules implemented in 1978. His 32 touchdown passes in 1959 were a record at the time, making Unitas the first QB to hit the 30-touchdown mark in a season. His 47-game consecutive touchdown streak between 1956 and 1960 was a record considered by many to be unbreakable. The streak stood for 52 years before being broken by New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees in a game against the San Diego Chargers on October 7, 2012. Post-playing days, after his playing days were finished, Unitas settled in Baltimore where he raised his family while also pursuing a career in broadcasting, doing color commentary for NFL games on CBS in the 1970s. He was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1979. After Robert Tosay moved the Colts franchise to Indianapolis in 1984, a move reviled to this day in Baltimore as Bob Osay's Midnight Ride, Unitas was so outraged that he cut all ties to the relocated team. Other prominent old-time Colts followed his lead. He asked the Pro Football Hall of Fame on numerous occasions to remove his display unless it was listed as belonging to the Baltimore Colts. The Hall of Fame has never complied with the request. Unitas donated his Colts memorabilia to the Babe Ruth Museum in Baltimore. They are now on display in the Sports Legends Museum at Camden Yards. Johnny Unitas was inducted into the American Football Association's Semi-Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1987. Unitas actively lobbied for another NFL team to come to Baltimore. After the NFL returned to Baltimore in 1996 as the Ravens, Unitas and most of the other old-time Colts regarded the Ravens as the true successors to the Baltimore Colts. Unitas was frequently seen on the Ravens sidelines at home games and received a thunderous ovation every time he was pictured on each of the huge widescreens at M&T Bank Stadium. He was often seen on the 30-yard line on the Ravens side. When the NFL celebrated its first 50 years, Unitas was voted the league's best player. Retired Bears quarterback Sid Luckman said of Unitas, "He was better than me, better than Sammy Baugh, better than anyone." Unitas lived most of the final years of his life severely hobbled. Due to an elbow injury suffered during his playing career, he was unable to use his right hand, and could not perform any physical activity more strenuous than golf due to his artificial knees. Personal life: at the age of 21, Unitas was married by his uncle to his high school sweetheart Dorothy Owell on November 20, 1954. They lived in Towson, Maryland and had 5 children before divorcing. Unitas' second wife was Sandra Lemon, whom he married on June 26, 1972. They had 3 children, lived in Timonium, and remained married until Unitas' death on September 11, 2002. Death: on September 11, 2002, Unitas died suddenly of a heart attack while working out at the Kernan Physical Therapy Center in Baltimore, Maryland. After his death, many fans of the Baltimore Ravens petitioned the renaming of the Ravens' home stadium after Unitas. These requests were unsuccessful since the lucrative naming rights had already been leased by the Ravens to Buffalo, New York-based M&T Bank. However, a statue of Unitas was erected as the centerpiece of the plaza in front of the stadium named in Unitas' honor. Large banners depicting the NFL Hall of Famer in his Baltimore Colts heyday flank the entrance to the stadium. Towson University, where Unitas was a major fundraiser and which his children attended, named its football and lacrosse complex Johnny Unitas Stadium in recognition of both his football career and service to the university. Toward the end of his life, Unitas brought media attention to the many permanent physical disabilities that he and his fellow players suffered during their careers before heavy padding and other safety features became popular. Unitas himself lost almost total use of his right hand, with the middle finger and thumb noticeably disfigured from being repeatedly broken during games. He is buried at Dulaney Valley Memorial Gardens in Timonium, Maryland. Legacy: Unitas held the record for most Pro Bowl appearances by a quarterback until Brett Favre broke his record in 2009. Unitas set the original standard for most wins as a starting quarterback with 118 regular season victories. Unitas was voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1979. 1987 American Football Association Semi-Pro Hall of Fame. Johnny Unitas number 16 is the only number retired by the football program at the University of Louisville. Unitas Tower, a dormitory at the University of Louisville, is named for Johnny Unitas. A statue of Johnny Unitas sits in the north end zone of Papa John's Cardinal Stadium at the University of Louisville. It is tradition for each Cardinal player to touch the statue as he enters the field. Since 1987, the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award has been awarded to the top senior quarterback of the current year in college football. The award is presented annually in Louisville. In 1999, he was ranked number 5 on the Sporting News list of the 100 greatest football players, behind only Joe Montana among quarterbacks. In 2004, the Sporting News ranked Unitas number 1 among the NFL's 50 greatest quarterbacks, with Joe Montana at number 2. In 1999, ESPN's SportsCentury, 50 Greatest Athletes of the 20th Century ranked Unitas number 32. Just before his death, Johnny Unitas became the community liaison for athletics in Towson, Maryland. The football stadium at Towson University was renamed Johnny Unitas Stadium in 2002. Unitas died less than a week after throwing his last pass in the grand opening of the stadium. Set the record for consecutive games with at least one touchdown pass at 47 games. This record was surpassed by Drew Brees in 2012. Set the record for consecutive games with at least 2 touchdown passes at 12 games. This record was surpassed by Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers with 13. Unitas' grandson, J.C. Unitas, was a junior quarterback at Villanova University. He currently attends the University of Tampa. Set the record for most consecutive games with at least a 120 passer rating. This record would later be matched by Kurt Warner, Popular Culture. In the Season 2 episode Nemesis of TV series The Fugitive, Dr. Richard Kimball tells the son of Lieutenant Philip Gerard that the boy's collection of football cards is missing one of Johnny Unitas. Appeared as a color commentator in the 1976 Disney film Gus. He guest-starred as himself in The Simpsons episode Homie the Clown. In the episode Mother Simpson, Grandpa Simpson also refers to Unitas having a haircut you could set your watch to. Both episodes are directed by David Silverman. In 1999, Unitas was an extra in Runaway Bride. He can be seen about 25 minutes into the movie sitting on the bench outside the bakery. In 1999, Unitas was featured in the movie Any Given Sunday as the head coach of the fictional Dallas Knights. For the game following his death, Indianapolis Colts and current Denver Broncos quarterback Peyton Manning asked to wear a pair of black cleats as a tribute to Johnny's signature black boots. The league denied his request and threatened Manning with a $25,000 fine. Manning decided not to wear them. Despite the threatened fine, Chris Redman, a Louisville alum like Unitas, and then quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, decided to pay homage by wearing the signature cleats during a game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In the episode Space, Geeks, and Johnny Unitas from Season 1 of The Adventures of Pete and Pete, Pete became obsessed with Unitas. Though Unitas never served in the military, Mort Walker gave him an unseen cameo in the comic strip Beetle Bailey. Beetle asks an intruder, "Who goes there?" When he gets the response Johnny Unitas, Beetle yells back "pass a euro," and is promptly hit in the helmet with a football. In 2013, a movie project was announced by the Baltimore Sun called Unitas We Stand, which will feature Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco as Unitas during the 1958 NFL Championship. See also, List of NFL on CBS commentator pairings, List of most consecutive starts by a National Football League quarterback, most wins by a starting quarterback. References. Sources: Bolus, Jim, and Billy Reed. Cardinal Football. Champaign, Illinois, Sports Pub Incorporated, 1999. Callahan, Tom. Johnny U, The Life and Times of John Unitas. New York, Crown Publishers, 2006. Lazenby, Roland. Johnny Unitas, The Best There Ever Was. Chicago, Triumph Books, 2002. Sharp, Dick. Johnny Unitas, Sunday's Best. In ESPN Sports Century. Michael Mackenbridge, editor. New York, ESPN Hyperion Books PPA 154 €65. Kavanaugh, Jack, Giants Among Men. New York, Random House. ISBN 978-58836-697-9, Mackenbridge, Michael, America's Game. New York, Anchor Books. ISBN 978-0-307-48143-6, http, www.google.com/ Search $client equals Safari ampersand RLS equal EN ampersand Q equal Johnny plus Unitas plus charges ampersand IE equal UTF-8 ampersand OE equal UTF-8 equal external links, career statistics and player information from NFL.com Euro Pro Football Reference, official website, Johnny Unitas at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Johnny Unitas at the Internet Movie Database, Johnny Unitas at Find a Grave, http, www.boltsfromthew.com 64374774 Per A History of the San Diego Chargers Part 10 The Nightmare Season.